sometimes it's not the person you loved who changed. It's the voices around them that were louder than yours, whispering doubts, feeding ego, and poisoning what was once pure. Welcome to Broken Truth, where love meets lies, and every story reveals the pain behind the smile. People often betray in love, not because they stop loving, but because they start listening. Toxic friends, driven by jealousy, boredom, or their own failed relationships become the background noise that distorts truth. They mock vulnerability, shame loyalty, and encourage recklessness. Slowly, your partner starts questioning what was once certain. They begin to view commitment as weakness, mistake temptation for freedom, and let peer validation become louder than their own heart. And before you know it, your relationship becomes collateral damage in someone else's bitter game. She met him in a season when she had stopped believing that love could still arrive. Quietly, no grand gestures, no loud declarations, just a conversation over coffee that turned into a 3-hour walk. Then a habit of sending each other random lines of poetry late at night. Then the kind of silence that didn't feel like distance, just comfort. He was different, not because he tried to be, but because he didn't. He didn't pretend to be unaffected by the world. He let her see the mess, the ache. The boy who still hadn't forgiven his father for walking out. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was just trying to be understood. She liked that. They built something slowly. No promises etched into the sky. Just tiny moments. Her head on his shoulder and a park bench that squeaked. His habit of tracing circles on her palm when he got nervous. Their shared playlist that started off with Bon Iver and somehow ended with old Kishore Kumar tracks. They weren't perfect, but they were careful not to bruise what felt rare. And in a world full of noise, they had managed to find a little corner of quiet until the noise found them. It started with new friends, or rather old friends who resurfaced when his photography started getting attention. Guys who hadn't called in years now wanted him around. All the time, at parties, at rooftops, in conversations that mocked stability. They laughed at men who texted their girlfriends too much, called love clingy, said real men didn't report in, or stay loyal to just one woman. At first, he defended her, told them she was his piece, that she made the world softer, but boys like those don't like soft things. They told him she was making him weak, that he was missing out, that while he was busy being a nice guy, the world was full of possibilities he was ignoring. And in between sips of rum and games of ego, their voices started crawling into the spaces they didn't belong. He began coming home later, started laughing at things she found sacred, said she was too emotional, that he needed space, that word so small, yet sharp enough to tear down everything they had built brick by brick. She noticed the change. In his eyes first, the way they no longer looked at her like she was a place he was glad to arrive at, but more like a reminder of something he couldn't name anymore. She asked once, "Are we okay?" He shrugged, said, "You're just too much sometimes." She said nothing. Because when someone starts echoing the voices around them, you realize you're no longer in a conversation, you're in a choir, and you're the only one not singing along. He cheated a month later, not with someone better, not with someone who knew his heart the way she did, just someone who was there, someone from one of those parties where the music was too loud to think, and the loyalty too weak to hold. When she found out, he didn't deny it. He just said, "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was drunk. It was a mistake." She smiled, not the happy kind. The kind you wear when the pain is too sharp to cry through. A mistake happens once. This was a decision, but the betrayal didn't stab her all at once. It trickled. It came in memories. In places they once went, and photos she forgot to delete, and songs that now felt like lies, but mostly it came in the loneliness of knowing she wasn't fighting him. She was fighting all the voices that convinced him love was weakness. She started sleeping with the light on, not because she was scared of the dark, but because darkness felt honest. It didn't pretend to be what it wasn't. Some nights, she wondered if he ever loved her at all, but deep down, she knew he did. He just didn't love her enough to protect their love from the world. And that is its own kind of death. Not being unloved, but being left undefended. He tried reaching out a few times, said he missed her, that it wasn't the same without her, but she never replied, because what do you say to someone who let the world talk them out of you? She started rebuilding, quietly found herself walking again, not to escape memories, but to make space for new ones. She began writing not about him, but about the version of herself she lost while trying to be enough. And slowly, painfully, she realized she didn't lose to another woman. She lost to the noise, to the laughter that mocked love, to the boys who never grew up, to the culture that glorifies betrayal and calls it liberation. She never had a chance, not because she wasn't worthy, but because she was up against a whole world that convinces people that love is boring and ego is thrilling. And that's the saddest part. Sometimes you don't lose love because it died. You lose it because someone handed it over to people who never deserved to touch it. And what can you do when the betrayal doesn't come from a lack of feeling, but from someone who let too many hands steer the wheel? You let go, not because it's easy, but because holding on to someone who let go first, that's the slowest kind of heartbreak. And she was tired of bleeding in silence, so one day she woke up, made herself tea, deleted the playlist, and told herself, I was good, I was soft, I was love, and maybe next time, I'll find someone who won't treat that like a flaw. She didn't talk about it much, not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because the hurt had settled into something quieter, something that didn't need to be screamed out to be real. Pain had turned into understanding, and understanding, with time, had begun to feel like release. The mornings were no longer heavy. She still remembered, still had moments where a scent or a song took her back to him, but it no longer felt like drowning, more like a wave that touched her feet, reminded her, and moved on. She didn't hate him, but she did stop waiting for him to become the version of himself she fell for. That version was gone, not because it had been a lie, but because he chose noise over stillness, applause over intimacy, and she no longer wanted to explain to someone why quiet love is louder than attention from the wrong crowd. So she changed the conversation first with herself. She stopped asking why he did it and started asking what she needed now. Some mornings, the answer was a long walk. Some days, it was a deep breath. Some nights, it was just sleep. Uninterrupted, guilt-free sleep. That was the beginning of peace. Not a grand epiphany, not a clean break. Just little choices, tiny boundaries. Moments where she chose not to chase closure in the same place where she lost herself. The grief came in flashes, but she let it, grieved the way he used to look at her, grieved the friends she never met, but somehow lost too, grieved the life they almost built, and then she moved again, gently. She didn't build walls, didn't pretend she didn't care. Instead, she chose solitude over performance, stopped going to places that drained her just to prove she was over it, stopped smiling for people who only showed up to gossip, not to help her heal. She started writing. Again, not about him, but about the quiet she was rediscovering. She started sitting in cafes alone, not to look unbothered, but because she liked the way the sun filtered through the window onto her book. She stopped answering every message, stopped explaining her silence. Her healing wasn't loud. It was a slow, sacred thing, like watering a plant that may or may not bloom, but still watering it, still hoping, still choosing growth. Even when no one was watching, one day, a friend asked her if she would ever trust again. She smiled, soft and tired. I don't think trust is about people anymore, she said. It's about me, trusting myself to walk away sooner next time, to listen to my own voice before the world's. And that was her power now, not in never getting hurt, but in not abandoning herself the moment someone else did. She had learned that love isn't a battlefield, and she wasn't made for war. She was made for peace, for the kind of love that doesn't need defending against loud voices, for the kind of connection that doesn't ask her to shrink just to keep it alive. And until that kind of love found her, if it ever did, she would stay soft, but this time soft with armor, not to fight, but to protect the quiet she worked so hard to find again, because some of the most important things we lose are the parts of ourselves we didn't even realize we were giving away, and now, piece by piece, she was taking herself back, not to become who she used to be, but someone wiser, gentler, braver, someone who could sit in her own company and not feel alone, someone who didn't need a crowd to feel worthy, someone who knew the most dangerous betrayals are the ones that come dressed as jokes, as fun, as friendship. And the most powerful healing is learning how to never again place your heart in a room where your name is treated like a punchline. She was done waiting for apologies. She was too busy coming home to herself. Sometimes losing someone reveals the deeper betrayal, how much of yourself you gave up trying to hold them. But healing, that's the quiet art of taking every lost piece and making something new. Subscribe for more stories that uncover the broken truth.